Imagine if we went back in time and gave an NFL team a cheat sheet for the draft, telling them exactly who the best players are in the position they are drafting for the first and second rounds, occasionally giving them a little nudge when it comes to free agency and who they shouldn't let go. What would those teams look like now if they were able to always play the draft perfectly? That's what I'm here to try and answer. Today we look at the Cowboys, and of course we don't talk about the 2016 draft in this, but it was obviously a big part of forming the team they are right now. But what's really more important about the Cowboys is the fact that they did the same thing as the Giants did, but to better success. And I've said it before, if you need a good offensive line, just draft offensive linemen in the first round. Now sure, you may not always get the exact player you want, but the Cowboys and the Giants have done the exact same thing. They took a left tackle from an old school powerhouse with the 9th overall pick, coincidentally. They then took a guard, or a guy that plays guard from that played tackle in college and can play all over the line, with a mid first round pick, and then they take a center late first, early-ish second round. Both teams did the exact same thing. The Giants ended up getting 2 out of 3 players. The Cowboys hit jackpot on every single one of those picks and got 3 out of the 3, so let's get onto the offensive line. Of course, the strength of the Cowboys, but with some recent events, of course, is not necessarily weaker, but it's going to be a different line next year. Let's start with the left tackle. In 2011, with the 9th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Tyron Smith. Of course, the correct pick. There were some other options as well there. Nate Solder, Anthony Costanzo, both good. Not as good as Tyron Smith, but it was a pretty decent year for left tackles. At left guard, we have La'el Collins. Then at center in 2013, with the 31st overall pick, the Cowboys selected Travis Frederick. Again, of course, the correct pick. We move on to the right guard in 2014 with the 16th overall pick. The Cowboys selected Zach Martin. Again, the correct pick, 3 of 3. And then at right tackle, because of course Doug Free has retired, we're going to have to make an assumption, and let's put Chaz Green there. Let's move on to the tight end position, starting of course with the veteran Jason Witten. Then in 2013, with the 47th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Gavin Escobar. And that could have been Travis Kelce, also could have been division rival Jordan Reed. And that is it. Of course, those 3 first-round studs on the offensive line. The rest, not as impressive as it maybe was last year, but still pretty good. Collins, of course, was a starter anyway till he got injured. The only real difference there is Chaz Green instead of Doug Free. Let's move on to the wide receivers. So our number 1 wide receiver is, of course, Dez Bryant, one of my favorite receivers for how he just rips the ball out of the air. Then we have Terrence Williams, recently re-signed, and in our slot position, we have Cole Beasley. Then let's move on to the fullback, where we have Keith Smith. Then we move on to the running back, of course, last year's first-round pick, Ezekiel Elliott, and at the quarterback position, of course, anyway last season, but with Tony Romo having retired, there we have Dak Prescott. Not that we would have had Tony Romo ahead of him, I just mentioned him, of course, because if he would have still been on the team, we would have at least mentioned him. This, however, is now the new Dallas Cowboys offense, which isn't actually new because we saw it last year, except for now we've made one change here with Travis Kelce. Just shows how well they've drafted, because they drafted studs on the offensive line, and we saw the fruits of that last year. It doesn't matter how young your quarterback is, how young your running back is, if you can block like they do, they can find success. So let's move on to the defense, which of course is a bit of a weak spot for the Cowboys. Let's start with the free safety position. In 2015, with the 27th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Byron Jones. That was the correct pick. Now, if you were just talking general safety, you could have had Landon Collins instead. Of course, again, a divisional rival. But at free safety, Byron Jones was the correct pick. Then we have a hole at strong safety. Could have been J.J. Wilcox, could have been Barry Church. However, both have left in free agency, but of course, we have the ability to recall players, and we're going to have to because there's basically nobody else to play in that position instead. You could, of course, have Kayvon Frazier. He is the last strong safety left on the depth chart, but we can pull our movie magic, and our starting strong safety is still Barry Church. Moving on to the linebackers, and I've swapped these around a little bit just so they sit better on this mode. At left outside linebacker, I've got Anthony Hitchens, and that is because I've got Sean Lee at the inside linebacker position, and that really is just so they stay with those original overalls. Obviously means nothing, but it's nicer to see that than the downgraded red numbers. And then at the right outside linebacker position, in 2011, with the 40th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Bruce Carter. Technically as an inside linebacker in a 4-3, I'm willing to kind of ignore that. Now, as a true inside linebacker, they could have had Mason Foster. However, if we push it a little bit to an outside linebacker in a 4-3 scheme, KJ Wright is the best player available for them there. And that's now a nice looking linebacking group. Let's move on to the cornerbacks. Our number 1 cornerback in 2012 with the 6th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Morris Claiborne. And now you have a whole long list of players you could have taken instead, such as Stephon Gilmore, Janoris Jenkins, Josh Norman, Drake Kirkpatrick, and Trumaine Johnson if we're talking non-Pro Bowlers. But we're going to stay out of the division and go for Casey Hayward. Of course, Janoris Jenkins, Josh Norman could have had them instead. But we're going to go with Casey Hayward here. Our number 2 cornerback then, Orlando Scandrick. And in the nickel position, a recent free agent signing, Nolan Carroll. Now for the final position group, the defensive line. Cowboys, of course, their thing in the past few years has been a need for a pass rusher. Can we find one here if we have drafted perfectly? We start at the left end position, and in 2014 with the 34th overall pick, the Cowboys selected DeMarcus Lawrence at defensive end. Now I was stuck between a couple of players here, Stephon Tuitt or Coney Ealy. Now I figured if the reigning Super Bowl champions and the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL think Coney Ealy is worth giving a go, the Cowboys should think he's worth giving a go too. So our left end here, Coney Ealy. Then at the right end position in 2015 with the 60th overall pick, the Cowboys selected Randy Gregory and could have instead had Danielle Hunter. I think we've put him in so many teams already. Danielle Hunter adds a whole bunch of sacks there for the Cowboys. Moving on to the defensive tackle position, the final position group. With these new defensive ends, it means we can move Tyrone Crawford back to the defensive tackle position. And then our final defensive tackle, another rookie from last year. We have Malik Collins, and these are the Cowboys. If they had always drafted perfectly, one difference on the offense, and it's basically only better support behind Jason Witten, which may become important in the next few years, but right now is not as important. Defense has a few more changes there. We've had to make a couple of recalls already because they let all their strong safeties walk in free agency. Linebackers looking a bit better now, finally have some true defensive ends that can get after the quarterback, and the cornerbacks are not looking bad either. Is this Cowboys team good enough to win in the playoffs?